All right, we are here on the PHLY Eagles set. Time to get into what seems like some shakeups, but also some holdovers to the Eagles offensive staff. EJ Smith, our Eagles insider, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so we have much more clarity on the Eagles offensive staff at this point. Aaron Moorhead is staying on as the Eagles wide receivers coach, and Jemal Singleton is staying on as the running backs coach / assistant head coach. There are a few more names from last year's staff that will be retained. In titles that we may or may not know, Parks Frazier was the pass game coordinator last year. He will be on staff. I can confirm, but I don't know what his title is going to be quite yet. And I've seen it reported that Cole Peterson, the assistant to the head coach, will also remain on staff. A few other names, Eric Dickerson, not the former all-time great running back, but he was a quality control coach for the Eagles last year. He's someone who's really well regarded in the building as well, so he will remain on staff.
They did whack Emmitt Smith, though.
Got nothing for you there. You mean EJ Smith?
No, I'm Eric Dickerson, Emmitt Smith. Yeah. You understand?
Barry Sanders, we're still waiting on.
Yes.
And Parks Frazier, I mentioned Parks Frazier. Greg Austin, assistant offensive line coach, is reportedly staying on the staff as well. So I think, obviously, Sean Mannion's had a lot of say and influence on his own staff, which I think is an encouraging sign. But I do think that as they formulate or as they finalize the staff, I think there are some holdovers from the staff that Nick Sirianni built the year before. The only other thing I didn't mention, quarterbacks coach, we don't know yet who that's going to be, but I do think Greg Olsen, as Mike Garafolo reported a week ago now, I think he is probably the name you'd expect to see in that role.
Olsen with an O.
Yes, not the TV.
Very experienced.
A lot of names that you have to be like, it's not the one you're thinking about. It's actually, another one of
Let's talk first about the holdovers here, because at first it seemed like this was going to be maybe an entirely clean slate of offensive coaches, as Sean Mannion comes in and brings in Josh Grizzard to take over the passing game, and now Stout is gone, and Mahaffey is here for the running game. We've obviously got a new offensive line coach. Are you surprised that Singleton and Moorhead stay? What do you make of it?
I wasn't surprised with Singleton, I would say.
I think I agree with that, Fran.
Yeah, I would say that's
also the assistant head coach.
Yes.
And Singleton had connections with Zach Taylor. He coached, on Zach Taylor's staff, which is, a connection with the scheme that you're expecting Sean Mannion to bring. I did expect not just because of the evaluation for Aaron Moorhead, some of the lack of production from some of the guys on the bottom of the depth chart, but also just because you would have expected them to want somebody with experience in a McVay Shanahan influence system at that position, and especially. But I guess this is what I would say is that
Aaron Moorhead is now the longest tenured coach on the Eagles staff.
Yeah.
He predated Nick Sirianni. I think that is a little bit surprising.
It is surprising.
Yeah. Especially because that was a role where that was like the master of the dark arts up until it was a new receivers coach every single year.
Yeah. That's a good analogy there. And especially because Nick Sirianni is so passionate about wide receiver play and the fundamentals of it. He says he spends a lot of time around that position during practice and in that position room. So it did surprise me a little bit, but I do think that this is Nick having an influence on the staff. I think it's an encouraging sign that Sean Mannion had as much say as he did. He had more say than I expected him to have. But I do think that this is an indication that Nick Sirianni has also been active in forming the staff.
Now, obviously, we don't need to spend too much time on Aaron Moorhead, but just to unpack it, obviously there is something that he provides that the Eagles value. Because, from the outside, the Eagles haven't really developed a wide receiver necessarily, right? It's been A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and then a rotating cast of guys who have never really popped. Even Jahan Dotson comes in as a first-round pedigree. They didn't make too much out of him necessarily. So, but behind the scenes, there must be something else that they value from Aaron Moorhead. And it's interesting. I do think you probably want some kind of carryover when it comes to the offensive players. Greg Austin, for instance, staying as the assistant offensive line coach makes sense as you have guys like Lane and Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens probably bristling at the fact that Jeff Stoutland is no longer here.
Yeah, and we talked about this with Chris Cooper, where, some of the draft pedigree, like you really want to see how they do with the premium draft, the players who were picked with premium picks. And, he hasn't quite had that to work with outside of Devontae Smith. Jahan Dotson's an example, but he also had struggled earlier in his career as well. So I agree with you. It would have been nice to see someone, maybe Darius Cooper will be that next season, like somebody from a day 3 pick or an undrafted player stepping into a big role because of his development. But yeah, I guess maybe the personality management, a former player, maybe you could make an argument there. But no, I agree with you. I think it was surprising.
Fran, you have been in the building with a bunch of these guys we're talking about. What are your takeaways on some of the guys who are still here?
Yeah, I think that anytime we talk about the value that assistant coaches bring, and we talked about it when there was the move with Jeff Stoutland, right? Is that there are all the ways that he can impact the roster and impact the team. Assistant coaches, like, what are the different areas that they would get graded on? It's like, all right, well, player development is one. We just talked about that. Game planning, player evaluation, connectivity with the guys in the locker room, like all of these things there, and there's other aspects of it as well. I agree that there's sometimes it's easy to see. It's like, all right, well, hey, like to me, like when I look at Jemal Singleton, right, I say, all right, well, what he got out of DeAndre Swift. Like DeAndre Swift was very much like a freelance runner, like was not a disciplined player. He comes here to Philly and has an outstanding year in 2023. You get Saquon Barkley. Saquon was a guy that was prone to bouncing and getting himself in trouble and like looking for things that weren't there. A lot of dancing in the backfield. You get to that, and obviously that 2024 season, like he got him to be so disciplined. You saw it very early where it was like, man, like he's staying on track at a higher rate than ever. So I think there's something to be said for, all right, like Jemal Singleton has that ability to connect with those guys and get them to stay on target. And I think that Aaron Moorhead certainly brings there's value that he's going to bring. And I think the connectivity with the guys in the room and understanding like how to manage like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, like over the last couple of years, that's tricky, right? Like I think that there's something to be said for the fact that we know that like it's been boiling under the surface with AJ, but the fact that they've made it for this long before it got to that point, I think it can be a little bit of a testament to Amo as well.
And then the one guy you didn't mention, EJ, Kevin Patullo, who is still technically under contract. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I feel like the longer he goes without an opportunity, maybe they do try to find him a soft landing, but the titles that he would take are sort of drying up. So I think it depends on what he's going to want to do.
Yeah, and then the Parks Frazier thing is also a little bit interesting, given that they brought in Grizzard. Could be as simple as he's got another year on his contract.
Yeah, offensive consultant, something. Yeah, something vague, probably.
It can't be quarterback coach. Like,
no, I'd be surprised. Right, yeah.
Right.
I don't know. What do you think?
That can't be. Like, there's no way they could sell that publicly.
I'd be surprised. If it's not Greg Olson at this point, I'd be surprised.
Yeah. Do you have Greg Olson thoughts?
No. I got nothing. I mean, he's been around the league for a long time. I'm sure I have notes like somewhere on him, but I think that to me, when I look at who you're bringing in for that role, I think having someone that's got like veteran substance to it, someone who's been in that room for a long time, I think that carries a lot of weight with this hire.
I had a random takeaway going through the staff earlier today.
Okay.
They all of a sudden have a lot of Duke guys. A lot of guys who have coached at Duke. Joe Casper has experience there. Josh Grizzard and Eric Dickerson also. They all kind of started their coaching careers under David Cutcliffe at Duke. I don't know what that is. As a reporter, it's something I'll be asking about. But yeah, it was one of my takeaways.
I'm selling the 2026 Eagles. Not good. All right, that'll do it. EJ Smith, Fran Duffy, Bo Wulf. Check us out on the PHLY Eagles show.